Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the vlog. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. We are back with the Ram TRX, which has been MIA on the channel for quite some time. And it doesn't mean that I've gotten rid of the truck. I absolutely love it. I still think, and I will say it, and I will defend this to the death, this is dollar for dollar the best vehicle in the entire automotive marketplace. I think it offers just about everything in one nice, clean package. But the reason why the TRX hasn't been on the channel is I don't really mod this truck too much, because for the longest time I didn't really anticipate keeping this truck for a really long time. I had all the intention of ordering a 2023, but with the $3,000 price increase on the 23 model year a couple weeks ago, it really doesn't make sense for me anymore to order a 23 and trade in this 2021 TRX. If I spec this truck exactly the same way, the only thing I would change is I would go with hydro blue on the exterior. I think it's a much more vibrant color. But this exact same truck costs about $12,000 to $13,000 more than what it did in 2021, because the base price of the TRX alone is up $14,000. And so to trade this truck in for the low 80s, pick up the new one, even with a discount from the forum dealer. Now, if you don't have a TRX and you're looking to get a TRX, definitely check out the Ram TRX forums to save yourself almost $10,000 to $11,000 on your Ram TRX. But in my case, trading this truck in for, say, somewhere around low 80s and buying a new 23 for somewhere in the low 90s after discounts, working out the sales tax offset, at the end of the day I'm looking at about $10,000 more, plus dealer fees, and then now excise tax is going to be considerably more expensive, to the tune of about $1,000 per year. And then this truck is locked in at under 3% interest, whereas the new truck would come in at 6%. So throw another $1,000 into interest. It just doesn't make sense for me to spend all that money to just change a color. I can wrap the truck for much cheaper, and this is a clean, relatively low mile truck with 12,000 miles on it now in the near 2 years that we've had the truck on the channel. And so with that said, the floodgate for mods is open. We are installing a CPS intake today. Unfortunately, I don't have the time or the bandwidth to do an install video or a thorough how-to, but today we're going to get it installed. I'm going to give everybody my impressions. We're going to talk a little bit about the intake, because I've heard the AFV and the S&B in person, and the CPS intake is about the same price, maybe a little bit more, since the other two do have discount codes during the right promotional weeks. But at the end of the day, having heard both of those intakes in person, I have to say that I think they definitely sound different, but I really want a really deep, thorough Supercharger Whine, something that the Trackhawk was very prominent and famous for. And so hopefully the CPS intake gives us that. So let me head over to my buddy's shop. I'm going to get the intake installed. I'll show a little bit of the process, but not a really thorough how-to, because I do have to get on the road and head to Canada tonight, so I'm trying to get this intake installed before I leave. And huge shout out to Solis Racing. I will leave the link in the description below. They were quick to get this intake out to me. They are one of the Ram TRX forum vendors, and they do a fantastic job taking care of the customer with all of the parts and supplies that you need, and in my case, the CPS intake that's in the truck bed. So huge shout out to Solis Racing. Definitely check them out in the description below. So let's find out what this intake sounds like. Got everything out of the box. Not a lot of moving pieces, but the one thing that sucks is they don't give us instructions with the intake. And there's Moose. You guys remember him from the See It Exhaust video. So we'll kind of figure this out as we go. Again, this won't be an informational how to install it video, but more of a product review. So let's stay tuned. All right, so I got everything installed. 1 hour it took to put it all together. This part right here takes the Ram airflow that comes from the hood and routes it through here. It comes up along against the filter box here. I will say that the fit and finish and quality is about on par with an off-brand product. That's at least what the installer kind of used for verbiage. HSC Performance Diesel made the boot kit for this. Not sure how involved they were with the intake, but the filter comes up maybe about 2 inches off of where the inlet is from the airflow the hood brings in, so water really wouldn't be an issue. It would probably drip right down. The only real issue that I have with the intake is that the AC line over here sits really flush against like the enclosure for the actual filter, so I'm a little nervous about how that long-term wise, the installer kind of bent it out of the way a little bit to get more clearance. It's doable, but again, like I said, it's a little suspect on that right there. The sensors itself, the fitment's a little squirrely. They don't fit super snug, so a little bit of electric.
Might take offense to that.
A little bit of electrical tape on the bottom filter there.
Oh yeah, tell them how I hacked it together. Thanks, buddy. Great.
A little bit of electrical tape to get the fitment a little bit more snug on the second sensor there, but otherwise everything kind of comes together nicely, and I look forward to seeing what this sounds like. Because it does preserve the logo, but firing it up for the first time, startup is about the same, I'd say. That is loud, much louder under load. Nice. It sounds way better with the windows up. Just that initial whine when you get into the throttle. And I don't think the camera is going to do it justice. So it is the next day now. I have probably about 6 hours of drive time on this intake, and right off the bat, if I had to do this again, I would absolutely reinstall this intake. I think it is a fantastic setup in terms of the sound that it gives you. There's a couple issues with fitment that I'll walk through again. I may have covered that last night or yesterday, but so big things to note, it pretty much just starts here at the throttle body. You have this silicone boot that comes up around to the main tube pipe. The two issues that I have here in terms of fitment and quality is this little piece right here is something they give you with the kit. We put a little bit of electrical tape to thicken this plastic piece so the fitment is nice and snug and tight so there's no motion. I need to come up with a better solution because as you can see here, the IAT sensor is very loose. I mean, it's sitting right up against the tab like it's supposed to, but I still think that there's a little bit to be had on how this IAT sensor sits on the tube. I do like the fact that it takes the Ram airflow and pushes that down into the intake. I think that makes a huge difference in providing cool air, and it leverages a lot of factory technology that's already been put into place here. And I absolutely love that this logo is retained. It's lost in, I believe, the S&B intake, but it's retained in the AFE intake. The only thing that I wish this kit had, given the price point is comparable to some of those other kits, is I wish they made some kind of tab bracket to make this a little bit more secure. You can see how much play there is, and that's because there's nothing for this to tab into. I may actually try to make a custom spacer to be able to put a self-tapper in this little like plastic piece, at least give this some structural rigidity. It would have been nice if they took the factory airbox bolt here and gave you maybe either a bracket that runs across for structural integrity, or mounted some brackets off the tube itself, since it is, I believe, an aluminum or metal tube, to come across and maybe secure this cover down a little bit more on the back end. In terms of the box itself, it is not airtight, but it does a good enough job to make sure that heat from the backside or this side of the motor isn't coming into the filter. And when you're driving and airflow is pushing in this direction, having an opening on either of these sides really shouldn't make a big difference in terms of heat soak. In terms of IATs, I have noticed maybe about 15 to 20 degrees less than the IAT temperature. Only other negative besides the fitment of the two sensors on the tube is that the AC line sits right up against this box right here. And there's not much I can do from an install perspective because the box actually sits on a little piece right here and then bolts in right over here, which means that it's really kind of in the place it's intended to be. You can't really mess that up. So despite bending the AC line, I bet you they probably could have cut that metal piece a little bit bigger to allow that AC line to clear with some more space. But apart from that, you guys did hear some sounds of the intake. Unfortunately, audio is not going to do this justice, but take my word for it. I've listened to the S&B, I've listened to the AFE. I've not heard the B Woody intake in person, but comparing this intake right here to the AFE and the S&B, this is significantly louder, both inside with the windows up to the driver as well as on the outside. And so like I mentioned, I would do this intake again in a heartbeat, no questions asked. I think it does enough for the engineering to be retained from the factory in terms of the use of the hood, and boxes off from the engine heat enough where I think it adds practicality and function. Now, if you are a heavy off-roader, the water fording height for the air filter is probably somewhere around here because that's where the factory air box sits, whereas now it's probably about 6 inches lower given where the filter bottoms out at. So you want to be mindful of that if you are a heavy off-roader. Not a big concern for me, but one thing just to be mindful of. And again, huge shout out to Solis Racing for the quick turnaround in getting this intake out to me. But that's all I have for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. If you have not already, definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Lots of great TRX content and C8 Corvette content to come, and maybe even a little bit of F350 magic. But as always, I appreciate all the love and support, and until the very next video, I look forward to seeing all of you in the comment section below.